It rarely happens in a clear moment. She doesn't sit you down and say, "I'm losing interest." She doesn't announce it. She doesn't explain it. Instead, it starts quietly. A little less excitement in her replies, a slower response time, shorter conversations, less curiosity about your life. And if you're not paying attention, you miss it completely. Because interest doesn't disappear in one decision. It fades in patterns. At first, everything still looks normal. She still replies. She still engages. She might even laugh and be polite, but the emotional energy is different. Earlier she was leaning in. Now she's just maintaining. That shift is subtle, but it's everything. Because maintaining is not the same as investing. So what actually causes this shift? It usually starts when emotional stimulation drops. Attraction isn't just about liking someone. It's about feeling something while interacting with them. Curiosity, surprise, emotional tension, a sense of, "I want to know more." When that feeling weakens, interest begins to fade naturally. Not because you did something wrong in one moment, but because the emotional experience stopped evolving. Another key factor is predictability. When a woman can fully predict your responses, your energy, your reactions, the emotional tension lowers. And without tension, attraction doesn't stay active. Because psychologically, the mind stays more engaged with what feels slightly uncertain, not what feels fully routine. So she doesn't consciously think, "He's boring." She just slowly stops feeling drawn in. Then comes emotional availability imbalance. If she feels like you are always available, always responding quickly, always initiating, always trying to keep things alive, something shifts internally. Not in a logical way, but in a feeling-based way. The dynamic starts to feel one-sided. And when something feels one-sided for too long, emotional investment begins to decline. Not as punishment, but as natural self-adjustment. But here's the part most men misunderstand. She doesn't lose interest because she wants to hurt you. She loses interest because her emotional experience changes. And women often make decisions based on how something feels over time, not just what is being said, so she won't always give you a clear explanation. She'll just slowly step back. You'll notice it in small things. She stops asking follow-up questions. She no longer brings new topics. Her messages become reactive instead of initiating. The emotional depth starts disappearing. And if you're emotionally invested, you start overcompensating. More texts, more effort, more explanation, more energy. But here's the paradox. The more you push, the more space she creates. Because pressure doesn't restore interest, it accelerates withdrawal. At this stage, something important is happening in her mind. She's not necessarily deciding, "I'm done." She's evaluating how she feels when she connects with you. And if the feeling doesn't stand out anymore, she naturally detaches emotionally before she detaches physically. That's why it feels sudden from your perspective. But in her mind, it was gradual. There's also a psychological mechanism called emotional comparison. She starts unconsciously comparing how I felt in the beginning versus how I feel now. And if the gap is too noticeable, interest declines further. Not because you became a different person overnight, but because initial excitement naturally settles unless something continues to refresh it. Now here's a crucial truth. You can't force interest back with explanation. You can't convince someone to feel something again. Emotional attraction doesn't respond to arguments. It responds to experience. So when interest starts fading, over-explaining only makes things heavier. It shifts the dynamic from connection to obligation. So what actually changes things? It's not panic. It's not chasing harder. It's not trying to fix everything immediately. It's recalibration, stepping back from emotional overinvestment, removing pressure from the interaction, letting space exist without forcing constant engagement. Because space does something powerful. It resets emotional perception. It gives her mind room to evaluate your presence without feeling overwhelmed. And here's something most people don't expect. Sometimes distance doesn't end attraction. It reveals whether it still exists. If interest was real but temporarily dulled by routine or imbalance, space can revive curiosity. But if interest was already gone, chasing wouldn't have saved it anyway. The biggest mistake is reacting emotionally to emotional withdrawal. Because when you react with anxiety, you don't stabilize the connection, you amplify imbalance. And imbalance is what caused the shift in the first place. So the real takeaway is this. When she starts losing interest without telling you, it's rarely a single moment. It's a collection of emotional experiences that slowly stop feeling meaningful to her. And your response in that phase matters more than the phase itself. Because attraction isn't only built in high moments, it's maintained in how you handle low ones. Sometimes people don't lose interest because of something you did wrong. They lose interest because nothing emotionally different is happening anymore. And understanding that is what separates confusion from clarity.